The rain came down so hard that night it blurred the city lights into streaks of white and gold. At 9:17 p.m., a black SUV pulled up outside the Greyhound bus station in Chicago. Inside sat Daniel Carter, a 38-year-old corporate executive whose expensive suit and luxury watch made him look like a man who had everything. Beside him sat his 72-year-old mother, Eleanor Carter, quietly holding a worn brown suitcase. She smiled warmly. "Daniel, are we meeting your cousin here?" Daniel gripped the steering wheel tighter. His hands were shaking. He couldn't look at her. "No, Mom, you're taking a bus." Eleanor frowned. "A bus? To where?" Daniel swallowed hard. "I found a senior living center. Someone there will help you." For several seconds, there was only silence. The sound of rain hitting the windshield filled the car. Then Eleanor asked the question every child fears hearing. "Did I do something wrong?" Daniel closed his eyes. "No." "Then why can't I stay with my family?" He had no answer. Because the truth was too ugly to say aloud. His wife, Vanessa, had made it clear that morning. "Either your mother leaves tonight, or the kids and I do." Daniel chose the easier path. Or at least, he thought it was. He stepped out of the SUV, opened the trunk, and placed Eleanor's suitcase beside a wet metal bench. People rushed past them carrying umbrellas, never noticing an old woman whose world was falling apart. Daniel reached into his wallet. He handed her $50. "This should help until someone comes." Eleanor looked at the money, then slowly pushed it back toward him. "I don't need your money, sweetheart. I only needed my son." Those words hit Daniel harder than any punch. Still, he forced himself back into the driver's seat. He started the engine. Eleanor walked to his window. She gently placed her hand against the glass. No anger. No screaming. Only tears. She whispered softly, "I will always love you." Daniel couldn't bear another second. He pressed the gas pedal. The SUV disappeared into the rainy night. In the rearview mirror, he caught one last glimpse of his mother standing alone beneath the flickering station lights. She looked smaller, older, and completely alone. Daniel told himself she'd be okay. He kept repeating it during the drive home. But deep inside, a voice whispered something he refused to hear. Tonight wasn't the end of her story. It was the beginning of yours. Daniel reached home just before 10 p.m. The lights inside the house were warm. Laughter echoed from the living room. To anyone passing by, it looked like the perfect family. But Daniel had never felt more empty. As soon as he walked in, Vanessa looked toward the front door. "Is it done?" Daniel nodded without speaking. She smiled. "Good. Now we can finally have our lives back." Those words made his stomach turn. His 8-year-old daughter, Lily, ran into the hallway. "Daddy, where's Grandma?" Daniel froze. Vanessa answered before he could. "Grandma went on a vacation, sweetheart." Lily frowned. "Without saying goodbye to me?" Daniel couldn't look at his daughter. He simply walked upstairs and locked himself in the bedroom. That night, sleep never came. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw his mother standing in the rain with her old suitcase. At 3 a.m., he finally got out of bed and opened an old photo album. The first picture showed a young Eleanor holding him after his father died. He remembered those years. His mother worked 2 jobs. She cleaned offices during the day, waited tables at night. Sometimes she skipped dinner so Daniel would have enough to eat. When he wanted to attend college, she secretly sold the only thing she had left from her late husband. Her wedding ring. Daniel never knew. Until years later. He shut the album quickly. The memories hurt too much. The next morning at work, Daniel walked into the boardroom as if nothing had happened. His coworkers congratulated him on closing a multi-million-dollar deal. Everyone admired his success. No one knew. The man wearing the expensive suit had abandoned his own mother less than 12 hours earlier. Then his phone buzzed. An unknown number. He answered. "Hello." A calm male voice replied. "Sir, I'm calling from the Greyhound bus station." Daniel's heart stopped. "We found an elderly woman sitting here alone. She says her name is Eleanor Carter. Is she your mother?" Daniel looked around the conference room. Everyone was watching him. His throat tightened. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then he whispered the words that would haunt him forever. "You have the wrong number." He hung up. Silence filled the room. Outside the station, an old man sitting nearby had heard everything. He slowly stood up, walked toward Eleanor, and said gently, "Ma'am, I think it's time someone finally helped you." Eleanor looked up with tear-filled eyes. She had no idea that meeting this stranger was about to change both of their lives forever. The old man slowly walked toward Eleanor. He held an umbrella over her head and smiled gently. "Ma'am, my name is Robert Hayes. I've been sitting here for almost an hour. I saw everything." Eleanor quickly wiped away her tears. "My son is a good man. He must have had a reason." Robert's heart broke. Even after being abandoned, she was still protecting her son. He had spent 40 years as a judge. He had seen thieves, liars, and criminals. But the saddest thing he had ever witnessed was a mother refusing to stop loving the child who had broken her heart. Robert picked up her suitcase. "Do you have anyone else?" Eleanor smiled faintly. "No. My husband passed away 20 years ago. My only family is my son." Robert nodded. "Then tonight, you'll be my guest." At first, Eleanor refused. "I don't want to be a burden." Robert chuckled. "My house has been empty since my wife passed away. Maybe we're both in need of some company." For the first time that night, Eleanor smiled. A real smile. An hour later, they arrived at Robert's beautiful home on the outskirts of Chicago. It wasn't a mansion, but it was warm, peaceful, filled with old family photographs. Robert showed Eleanor the guest room. "I hope you'll stay until we figure things out." Eleanor quietly thanked him. That night, before going to bed, she took a small framed photo of Daniel from her suitcase. She placed it beside the bed, folded her hands, and whispered, "Dear God, please don't punish my son. Just help him find his way back." The next morning, Robert woke to the smell of fresh pancakes. He walked into the kitchen in surprise. Eleanor was cooking breakfast while humming an old song. "You didn't have to do this," Robert said. She smiled. "It's the least I can do." As they ate together, Robert noticed something. Despite everything she had lost, she still thanked God before every meal. She still smiled. She still asked others how they were feeling before talking about herself. Robert thought to himself, how could anyone abandon a woman like this? Meanwhile, across the city, Daniel sat in his glass office overlooking downtown Chicago. He tried to focus on contracts and meetings, but every few minutes, he glanced at his phone. No missed calls, no messages. A strange feeling settled over him. For the first time in years, he realized something. His mother had always been the first person to call him every morning, to ask if he'd eaten, to wish him luck, to remind him to drive safely. Today, the phone remained silent. And somehow, that silence was louder than any words. Just then, his assistant knocked on the office door. "Mr. Carter, there's an elderly gentleman here to see you. He says, it's about your mother." Daniel's face turned pale. Daniel stared at his assistant. "Send him in." A few seconds later, the office door opened. An elderly man in a navy blue coat walked inside with calm, confident steps. He extended his hand. "My name is Robert Hayes." Daniel shook it. "What is this about?" Robert studied Daniel's face for a moment. "So, you're Eleanor's son." Daniel's heart skipped a beat. "Where is she? Is she okay?" Robert didn't answer immediately. Instead, he slowly sat down across from Daniel. "I found your mother sitting alone at the Greyhound bus station. She spent nearly 2 hours waiting, because she believed you were coming back." Daniel lowered his eyes. Guilt hit him like a wave. I had no choice." Robert's expression hardened. "No choice? I've buried my wife. I've lost friends. I've watched families fall apart. But don't ever tell me a son has no choice when it comes to his mother." The room fell silent. Daniel had closed million-dollar business deals without breaking a sweat. But now, he couldn't even form a sentence. Robert stood up. "I didn't come here to shame you. I came because your mother asked me to." Daniel looked up in surprise. She asked you. Robert nodded. Do you know what she told me last night? Daniel slowly shook his head. Robert smiled sadly. She said, "Please don't blame my son. He's under a lot of pressure. He has a good heart." Daniel's eyes filled with tears. Even now, after everything he had done, his mother was still defending him. Robert reached into his coat pocket and placed a small envelope on the desk. She wrote this for you. If you ever wanted to see her again, you should read it. Without another word, Robert walked out of the office. The door closed softly behind him. Daniel stared at the envelope for several minutes. His hands trembled as he opened it. Inside was a single handwritten letter. It read, "My dear Daniel, if you're reading this, it means you're thinking about me. Please don't feel guilty. A mother's love doesn't end because of one painful day. I prayed for you before I slept last night, and I will pray for you every night after this. I only ask one thing. Be the kind of father your children will always be proud of. Love forever, Mom." A tear landed on the paper. Then another. For the first time in years, Daniel cried. Not because he had lost money. Not because he feared losing his reputation. But because he had finally realized the only person who had loved him without conditions was the one he had abandoned. Just then, his phone rang. It was Vanessa. Daniel wiped his eyes and answered. Her voice was cold. "Don't even think about bringing your mother back. If you do, you'll lose your family." Daniel looked at the letter in his hand, then out the office window. For the first time, he questioned whether the family he was protecting was worth the mother he had thrown away. Daniel drove home earlier than usual that evening. For the first time in months, he wasn't thinking about contracts, profits, or promotions. He was thinking about one question. How had he become the kind of son who could leave his own mother behind? When he walked through the front door, Vanessa was waiting. She crossed her arms. "You went to see her, didn't you?" Daniel placed the letter on the kitchen counter. "I met the man who helped Mom." Vanessa rolled her eyes. "Oh, please. Don't start feeling guilty now." Daniel looked at her quietly. "Guilty? Vanessa, I abandoned my own mother." She laughed coldly. "And? She's old. She'll be fine." Those words shattered something inside him. That night, dinner was silent. Their daughter, Lily, looked around the table. "Daddy, when is Grandma coming home?" Before Daniel could answer, Vanessa snapped. "Grandma isn't coming back." Lily's eyes filled with tears. "But she promised we'd bake cookies together." Daniel looked at his little girl. For the first time, he saw fear in her eyes. Not fear of her grandmother. Fear of becoming someone who could disappear without explanation. After the children went to bed, Daniel made his decision. He packed a small suitcase. Vanessa watched from the bedroom doorway. "What are you doing?" "I'm going to find my mother." Vanessa's face turned red. "If you walk out that door, don't bother coming back." Daniel stopped for a moment. Years ago, that threat would have terrified him. Tonight, it didn't. He picked up his suitcase, walked to the front door, and without looking back, he said quietly, "I already lost the person who loved me the most. I'm not losing her twice." The door closed behind him. The next morning, Daniel drove to Robert's house. His heart raced as he knocked on the door. Robert opened it. "I knew you'd come." Daniel looked past him. "Can I see my mother?" Robert's smile slowly faded. "I'm sorry. You're too late." Daniel's face turned white. What do you mean?" Robert stepped aside. "The room is empty. Eleanor left before sunrise. She said she needed to start a new chapter." Daniel felt the ground disappear beneath his feet. "Where did she go?" Robert slowly shook his head. "She asked me not to tell anyone. Not even you." Daniel collapsed into a chair. His chance to say "I'm sorry" had slipped away. But he didn't know. Thousands of miles away, a phone call was about to change Eleanor's life forever. A phone call connected to a secret she had kept hidden for more than 30 years. Daniel spent the next 3 months searching for Eleanor. He visited every senior center in Chicago, every homeless shelter, every hospital. He even returned to the same Greyhound station every Friday night, hoping to see her sitting on that old bench. She was never there. Eventually, life forced him to move on. Vanessa filed for divorce. The court awarded her the house and primary custody of the children. Daniel moved into a small one-bedroom apartment. The man who once lived in luxury now folded his own laundry in a tiny kitchen and ate frozen dinners alone. Every night, he opened his mother's letter. Every night, he cried. Meanwhile, more than 1,000 miles away, in Boston, Eleanor was beginning a new life. Robert had quietly arranged for her to stay with his younger sister, Margaret, who ran a small community center for seniors. Eleanor volunteered every day. She cooked meals, read books to lonely residents, comforted people who had no families left. Everyone loved her. They called her Grandma Ellie. But no one knew she carried a broken heart. One rainy afternoon, the community center received a visit from a well-dressed attorney. Is Mrs. Eleanor Carter here? Eleanor stepped forward. I'm Eleanor. The attorney smiled politely. My name is Michael Bennett. I've been looking for you for almost 6 months. She looked confused. Looking for me? Why? He handed her a sealed envelope. It's regarding the estate of William Parker. Eleanor froze. The name brought back memories she hadn't spoken about in more than 30 years. William Parker had been the owner of a small construction company where Eleanor worked as a secretary when she was young. He had always treated her with kindness after her husband died. Years later, they lost contact. I don't understand, Eleanor whispered. The attorney replied, Mr. Parker passed away last year. And, according to his final will, he left something in your name. Eleanor stared at him in disbelief. There must be some mistake. Michael slowly smiled. There isn't. The next day, Eleanor met the attorney at his office. He placed several documents on the table. Mrs. Carter, Mr. Parker never forgot what you did for him. Eleanor frowned. What did I do? Michael opened an old file. 32 years ago. His company was about to go bankrupt. Everyone walked away. Except one employee. You. You worked for 6 months without accepting a paycheck because you believed the company could survive. Tears filled Eleanor's eyes. I had completely forgotten. Michael nodded. He never did. He rebuilt the company into one of the largest construction firms in the country. And, before he died, he changed his will. Eleanor held her breath. Michael pushed one final document toward her. You are now the majority shareholder of Parker Holdings. The company is worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Eleanor's hands began to shake. She wasn't thinking about the money. She whispered only one sentence. If Daniel were here, he would be so proud. What she didn't know was that fate was already preparing the day when her son would walk into Parker Holdings, not as family, but as an employee begging for a job. 3 years passed. Life had changed beyond recognition. Daniel Carter was no longer the confident executive everyone admired. After his divorce, he lost more than his family. The real estate company he had worked for became the center of a massive fraud investigation. Although Daniel wasn't involved in the crime, the company's collapse destroyed his career. No one wanted to hire a man whose name had been connected to the scandal. His savings disappeared. His luxury SUV was repossessed. His expensive home belonged to the bank. Now, every morning, Daniel stood in line with dozens of strangers, hoping someone would give him a chance. For the first time in his life, he understood what it meant to start over. One cold Monday morning, Daniel saw a job advertisement. Parker Holdings Senior Operations Manager needed. The salary was generous. The company had an excellent reputation. This could be my second chance, he whispered. He spent the entire night preparing for the interview. He ironed his only suit, polished his old shoes, and before leaving the apartment, he looked at the faded letter his mother had written years earlier. He folded it carefully and slipped it into his wallet. It had become his good luck charm. The headquarters of Parker Holdings was breathtaking. A 40-story glass tower overlooked downtown Boston. Daniel walked through the revolving doors, trying to hide his nervousness. The receptionist smiled. Good morning, sir. Please wait in conference room 7. More than 20 applicants were already there. Some looked younger. Some looked more experienced. Daniel silently prayed. I just need one chance. An hour later, The HR director entered the room. Ladies and gentlemen, our chairwoman has decided she would personally meet the final candidate. Everyone exchanged surprised looks. A billionaire chairwoman interviewing applicants herself? That almost never happened. One by one, candidates were called. Hours passed. Finally, Mr. Daniel Carter? His heart pounded. This is it. He straightened his tie and walked toward the executive floor. The elevator doors opened. The assistant smiled politely. The chairwoman will see you now. Daniel took a deep breath. He pushed open the large wooden door. The chair behind the massive desk slowly turned around. Daniel froze. His face turned completely white. His knees nearly gave out. Because sitting in that chair, wearing an elegant navy blue suit, was the last person he ever expected to see. His mother, Eleanor Carter. She looked at him calmly, neither angry nor smiling, just quietly looking into the eyes of the son who had abandoned her 3 years earlier. Daniel whispered with trembling lips, "Mom." Daniel stood frozen at the doorway. His mouth went dry. His heartbeat thundered in his ears. "Mom?" Eleanor slowly looked up from the file on her desk. 3 years had changed her. Her silver hair was neatly styled. She wore a tailored navy blue suit. The frightened woman who once sat alone at a bus station was gone. In her place sat a confident businesswoman whose presence filled the room. "Please," she said calmly. "Have a seat, Mr. Carter." She hadn't called him Daniel. She had called him Mr. Carter. The words cut deeper than any insult. Daniel slowly sat down. His hands trembled. "I've been looking for you for 3 years." Eleanor nodded gently. "I know. You knew. Robert told me." Daniel lowered his head. "I wanted to apologize. I wanted to fix everything." A long silence filled the office. Then Eleanor quietly asked, "Tell me something, Daniel. If I were still that poor old woman sitting at the bus station, would you have searched this hard?" Daniel couldn't answer, because he honestly didn't know. Eleanor opened the file in front of her. "You've applied for the position of Senior Operations Manager. I've read your resume. Your experience is impressive." Daniel looked up hopefully. "Then, does that mean?" She interrupted him. "No." Daniel felt his heart sink. "I can't give you this job." He stared at her in disbelief. "Because I'm your son?" She slowly shook her head. "No. Because leadership isn't only about business. It's about character. And 3 years ago, you failed the most important test of your life." Every word was calm, but every word was true. Daniel felt tears running down his face. "I deserve that. I deserve everything. But please, I don't want your money. I don't want your company. I just want my mother back." For the first time, Eleanor's eyes filled with tears. She stood up and walked toward the large window overlooking the city. "I prayed every night that God would protect you, even after what happened. I never hated you." Daniel whispered. "Then why won't you forgive me?" Eleanor turned around. A gentle smile appeared on her face. "I forgave you the night you left me." Daniel looked confused. "Then why?" She finished his sentence. "Because forgiveness isn't the same as forgetting." Just then, there was a knock on the office door. The HR director stepped inside. "Ma'am, the board of directors is waiting." Eleanor nodded. Then she looked back at Daniel. "I have one final decision to make. It won't only change your future. It will change mine as well." Daniel held his breath. He had no idea whether he was about to lose everything or receive the one gift he no longer believed he deserved. The HR director stepped inside. "Ma'am, the board of directors is waiting." Eleanor nodded. Then she looked back at Daniel. "I have one final decision to make. It won't only change your future. It will change mine as well." Daniel held his breath. He had no idea whether he was about to lose everything or receive the one gift he no longer believed he deserved. The boardroom doors opened. 10 directors stood as Eleanor entered. Daniel quietly followed behind, unsure why she had asked him to come. The room fell silent. Everyone respected Eleanor Carter. In just 3 years, she had transformed Parker Holdings into one of the fastest-growing companies in America. No one questioned her decisions. Not anymore. Eleanor took her seat at the head of the table. She looked around the room. Then she spoke. Before today's meeting begins, I'd like you all to meet someone. She turned toward Daniel. This is my son. The directors smiled politely. Daniel lowered his head in shame. He felt unworthy of standing beside her. One of the directors asked, "So this is the gentleman applying for the operations manager position?" Eleanor nodded. "Yes." The director smiled. "With his experience, I believe he'd be an excellent addition to the company." Daniel looked up hopefully. Maybe, just maybe, this was his second chance. Then Eleanor quietly replied, "I disagree." The room became silent. The directors exchanged confused glances. Eleanor continued, "A company can recover from financial loss. It can recover from bad investments. But recovering from a lack of integrity is much harder." Daniel closed his eyes. He knew she was right. A few moments later, Eleanor stood and walked toward him. She held out a small envelope. "This belongs to you." Daniel opened it. Inside was the same $50 bill he had left on the bench beside her 3 years earlier. It was carefully folded, protected inside a clear plastic sleeve. His hands began to shake. "You kept it?" Eleanor nodded. "Not because I needed the money, but because I never wanted to forget that night." Tears rolled down Daniel's face. "I'm so sorry, Mom. I would give everything to change that day. I was selfish. I was weak. I chose comfort over family. And I've regretted it every single day since." The room was completely silent. Even the directors had tears in their eyes. Eleanor stepped closer. She gently wiped the tears from Daniel's face, just as she had done when he was a little boy. Then she smiled. "You came here looking for a job, but I have something more important for you." Daniel looked at her confused. "I won't make you a manager. I won't make you an executive. For the next 6 months, you'll work in our community outreach program. You'll help abandoned seniors. You'll visit nursing homes. You'll serve meals. You'll listen to people whose families forgot them. If you can learn to value people, then maybe one day, you'll be ready to lead them." Daniel couldn't stop crying. He nodded. "I'll do it. I'll do whatever it takes." For the first time in years, Eleanor opened her arms. Daniel rushed forward and hugged his mother tightly. The board members quietly looked away, giving a mother and son the privacy they had both waited 3 long years to find. But outside the boardroom, someone had been watching everything through the glass door. Vanessa. And the look on her face made one thing clear. She hadn't come to congratulate Daniel. She had come for the company. The boardroom doors slowly opened. Vanessa walked inside wearing an expensive designer suit, as if nothing had ever happened. She smiled at Eleanor. "Mrs. Carter, I just wanted to say how happy I am to see you doing so well." Daniel couldn't believe what he was hearing. 3 years ago, she had demanded that Eleanor leave. Now she acted as if they were family. Eleanor looked at her quietly. "What brings you here, Vanessa?" Vanessa placed a folder on the table. "I've started a consulting business. I thought Parker Holdings might be interested in working together." Before anyone could respond, she turned to Daniel. "And Daniel, maybe now we can fix our relationship." Daniel stared at her. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then he calmly replied, "You didn't come because you missed me. You came because you found out who my mother became." Vanessa's smile disappeared. Eleanor closed the folder without opening it. "Our company works with people who value honesty, not opportunity disguised as love." She gently slid the folder back across the table. "I'm sorry. We'll have to decline." Vanessa's face turned pale. She realized there would be no second chance. Without another word, she picked up her folder and walked away. This time, no one stopped her. 6 months later, Daniel kept every promise he had made. He spent his days serving meals in nursing homes, listening to lonely veterans, reading books to elderly women who had lost their eyesight, driving abandoned seniors to doctor's appointments. At first, he did it because his mother had asked. Soon, he did it because he genuinely cared. The selfish businessman slowly disappeared. A compassionate man took his place. One afternoon, Eleanor visited the community center without telling him. She stood quietly near the doorway. Daniel didn't notice her. He was helping an old man button his winter coat. Then he sat beside an elderly woman and patiently listened as she told the same story for the third time. He never looked at his watch. He never rushed her. He simply smiled. Eleanor's eyes filled with tears. Robert, standing beside her, whispered, "He's finally become the son you always believed he could be." Eleanor smiled. "I never stopped believing." The following week, Parker Holdings held its annual leadership ceremony. Employees from across the country filled the auditorium. Eleanor walked onto the stage. She looked toward Daniel, who was sitting quietly in the front row. She smiled. 3 years ago, I lost a son." The room became silent. "But today, I found him again." She invited Daniel onto the stage. The audience stood and applauded. Then Eleanor handed him a small wooden box. Inside was an old silver key. Daniel looked confused. "What is this?" She smiled. "The key to my home. Because no mother should ever live without her child. And no child should ever leave their mother behind." Daniel hugged her tightly as tears streamed down his face. The entire audience rose to their feet. Many were crying. 1 year later, Daniel became the director of Parker Holdings Family First Foundation, a charity dedicated to helping abandoned seniors find safe homes and loving families. The first building they opened stood across the street from the same Greyhound bus station where everything had begun. Above the entrance was a bronze plaque. It read, "No one is ever too old to deserve love, and no child is ever too successful to forget the hands that raised them." Every evening, Daniel sat beside his mother on the front porch. They drank tea, watched the sunset, and talked about life. Not because they were trying to erase the past, but because they had chosen to build a better future.